You know the story of Cinderella, the poor girl who, with the help of a fairy godmother, finds her happily ever after. But what if I told you that this is just a light version of the story, an illusion created to protect you from what really happened? In the original tale, there was no fairy godmother. Cinderella found help in a much darker place, at her mother's grave. There, between tears and revenge, she made a pact that would change her fate forever. Get ready to discover the true story of Cinderella, where blood was spilled, sacrifices were made, and the price of power was much higher than any glass slipper. The story of Cinderella begins very differently from the one you know. After her mother's death, Cinderella is left in the hands of her cruel stepmother and her sisters, who despise her. However, the pain of loss goes beyond simple mourning. The real story reveals that Cinderella does not find solace in dreams of a better life, but at her mother's grave, a place filled with sorrow and mystery. Amidst her grief, Cinderella visits her mother's grave every day, and it is there that she makes her first desperate plea. But unlike the kind fairy godmother of modern versions, there is no benevolent magic here. Beside the grave, a tree grows, planted by Cinderella with a single seed, watered by her daily tears. This tree is her only company, and soon she will realize that something more sinister lives there. Among the twisted branches of the tree, birds begin to appear. They are not cheerful friends, but creatures that seem to carry a dark power. They watch everything in silence, as if waiting for something yet to come. These birds will become Cinderella's true helpers, but what they offer comes at a price. Marked by suffering, Cinderella continues to cry at the grave for help, not for kindness, but for revenge against the cruelty she suffers at home. The tree and the birds, as if hearing her deepest desire, begin to conspire with her. Cinderella, living as a slave in her own home, finally reaches her breaking point. Her stepmother treats her with disdain, and her sisters make her life a true hell. When the announcement of the great ball is made, where the prince will choose his bride, Cinderella does not dream of love. No, she dreams of escape, of proving her worth, and perhaps of seeking revenge on those who oppressed her. She returns to her mother's grave, but this time, her pleas are different. She is no longer the innocent young girl asking for relief. Now, she craves power. Power to face her stepmother, to show her sisters that she is not a mere servant. The birds, always attentive, hear her words and, as if understanding, respond by bringing her something with their black wings. Instead of a fairy godmother with a magic wand, the birds bring her a golden dress. It is heavy, shiny, and carries with it the burden of her deepest desire. But the most macabre gift comes in the form of shoes, not of glass, but of pure gold, as if forged in the fire of her anger and ambition. With the dress and shoes, Cinderella is ready for the ball. However, she is no longer the oppressed girl who lives in the ashes. Now, there is a darkness within her, something that completely transforms her. The birds accompany her, like shadows, as she heads to the palace, not in search of love, but with a heart full of intentions the prince could never foresee. With her golden dress and gleaming shoes, Cinderella arrives at the ball, but not as a girl enchanted by magic. Her heart is colder than ever. When she enters the hall, all eyes turn to her, fascinated by a beauty that seems supernatural, almost threatening. The prince, of course, cannot look away, but what he sees is not just beauty. There is something frightening about her, something that both attracts and terrifies him at the same time. As they dance, the environment seems to close in around them. The music becomes muffled, the lights dim. Cinderella, silently, keeps an enigmatic smile, as if she knows something the prince does not. The birds, her faithful companions, watch everything through the castle windows, like sinister shadows ready to act at any moment. The prince becomes increasingly fascinated, but there is an invisible force binding him to her, something that is not in her appearance, but in the weight of her steps. Those golden shoes seem to carry Cinderella's destiny and everyone around her. She is no longer the helpless young girl living in the ashes. Now, she controls what happens, and the prince is just a piece in the game. But like every game, there will be a price to pay. When the night is about to end, Cinderella, knowing that something dark is about to happen, decides to flee before the prince discovers more about her. However, the prince, desperate to keep that mystery in his hands, orders the castle doors to be closed. But Cinderella is smarter. She runs down the stairs, and at that moment, one of the birds that accompanied her takes action, causing one of the golden shoes to slip off her foot. The prince finds the shoe left behind on the staircase. Now, he has a way to find her, but it is not a simple act of love. It's as if the shoe carries a curse, an invisible mark of blood, a clue that any woman who tries to claim that power will end up suffering. The next day, the prince, obsessed, begins his search for his mysterious lady. He visits every house in the kingdom, carrying the golden shoe with him. But the shoe is not meant for just anyone. When he arrives at Cinderella's house, the stepmother and her daughters see this as a chance to reach the wealth and power they so desperately desire. The first sister tries to put on the shoe, but it is far too small. In a desperate and cruel act, the stepmother suggests that her daughter cut off her toe to make the shoe fit. She obeys, and the prince, initially deceived, takes her with him. But on the way, Cinderella's birds begin to sing a macabre song, revealing the truth to the prince. Look at the blood in the shoe. The shoe is too tight. The true bride is still at home. Horrified, the prince sees the blood dripping from the shoe and returns, realizing he has been deceived. When the prince returns to Cinderella's house, the stepmother, determined to gain favor with royalty, sends the second daughter to try on the shoe. But like the first, she also cannot fit it. This time, the stepmother, even more wicked, suggests a crueler act: cut off the heel. Like her sister, the second daughter obeys, blinded by ambition. With pain and suffering, she forces her bloodied foot into the golden shoe. The prince once again takes the sister with him. However, Cinderella's birds, always vigilant, continue their macabre song. Look at the blood in the shoe. The shoe is too tight. The true bride is still at home. This time, the prince does not need to look closely to know he has been deceived again. The blood dripping from the shoe reveals the terrible sacrifice made by the young woman. Furious, he returns to the house, demanding to see all the women who live there. Finally, Cinderella, who had been ignored until now, is called by her stepmother. Covered in ashes and wearing ragged clothes, the stepmother and her sisters mock her, saying that such a miserable creature could never be the mysterious lady from the ball. But the prince insists. When Cinderella slips on the shoe, it fits perfectly. There is no blood, no pain, only the smooth fit that reveals her true identity. The birds, satisfied with the outcome, perch on Cinderella's shoulders like dark guardians, observing everything with piercing eyes. Now that her true identity has been revealed, Cinderella is taken to the palace by the prince. But the story does not end with a simple happy ending. The stepmother and the sisters, desperate for forgiveness and a chance at redemption, follow her to the castle for Cinderella's wedding to the prince, believing they could somehow benefit from Cinderella's new position. But the birds, Cinderella's loyal guardians, would not allow such betrayals to go unpunished. During the wedding, as the sisters try to approach Cinderella, feigning friendship and regret, the birds strike. They do not merely scare or push the sisters away. They blind them, mercilessly pecking at their eyes until nothing remains but shadows and pain. This punishment was not arbitrary. In ancient tales, especially those by the brothers Grimm, justice is ruthless. The blindness of the sisters reflects the blindness of their souls, their inability to see beyond their own ambition and cruelty. Cinderella watches it all in silence. Revenge does not need to be spoken, and her silence is more terrifying than any scream of fury. The sisters are forever marked, not only physically, but in their souls, while Cinderella ascends to the throne, carrying with her the weight of all those who try to stop her from reaching her destiny. And so ends the true story of Cinderella. If you enjoy discovering this darker side of fairy tales, leave a like. It helps the channel grow and brings more stories like this to you. And if you have a theory or a story you'd like to see here, leave a comment. See you next time.